a recent development has occurred in the narrative. My brother, Mark, who is 28 years of age, proposed to my fiancée, Jen, who is 26 years of age. Jen's ex-partner, Mark, had been aware of my family for a period of time. I am displeased with Mark's actions. To provide context, Mark and Jen had been in a relationship for approximately 1 month in August 2022. Mark ended the relationship with Jen because he was disinclined to remain in a relationship and had no intention of settling down. At the time of their courtship, I was residing in a different state, unaware that he was in a relationship. I was similarly unacquainted with Jen until I met her in October, shortly after I relocated. We established a strong rapport. She was, without question, the most attractive and intelligent woman I had ever encountered. We met on several occasions before we formalized our relationship. Fast forward to December, and I finally introduced her to my family and proposed that they meet her at Christmas. They were aware that I was in a relationship, but I tend to be somewhat reserved about my personal life, so I limited the details I shared about her until I was certain of the seriousness of our relationship. My parents requested to see photographs, and they began passing my phone around the dinner table. Mark observed this and became enraged, accusing me of being his brother for dating his former romantic partner. My boyfriend demanded that I terminate my relationship with her. I refused, and when I inquired of Jen about the matter, she corroborated that they had dated and provided me with the particulars of their separation. It took several weeks, but eventually, Mark ceased to bring up the topic of my dating his ex-girlfriend. I assumed that he had moved on from it. However, on Jen's birthday this year, I took her out to a formal dinner with both of our families and her closest friends, and I proposed marriage to her. Mark reacted with another outburst, and angrily he became enraged when I proposed marriage to her, and my sisters and I swiftly and firmly put an end to the discussion. The incident occurred this past weekend. Mark had been unusually quiet about the whole thing for the last 2 months. I did not see him much and assumed he had gone into a period of low contact with me, which I did not mind. Then he invited me and Jen to a family dinner at his apartment with my parents and sisters. I found this somewhat peculiar, but my parents and sisters were also going, so we decided to accept the invitation. The dinner was pleasant, unassuming, and relatively informal. Approximately 30 minutes into the conversation, Mark stood and informed us that he had something to share. He proceeded to deliver an extended monologue about his joy at having his family present for this significant occasion. Then, he got down on one knee and presented Jen with a ring, which he had procured at a low cost. He then inquired whether she would accept his proposal of marriage. Jen appeared perplexed and visibly uneasy, demanding that he remove the ring and resume his seated position. My father attempted to intercede. I attempted to restrain Mark, but he resisted. I struck him with a closed fist. I will not reiterate the majority of the incident, as I was too enraged to even listen to the majority of it. However, Mark said something along the lines of wanting to demonstrate to me that Jen was not genuinely interested in me and was merely seeking retribution against him before the situation could escalate further. My parents immediately intervened and promised to speak with Mark. Several days have passed since the incident occurred, and I am still visibly upset. I am uncertain about the best course of action in this situation. I am concerned that Jen may have second thoughts about marrying me as a result of this incident. I would appreciate any advice on how to proceed. I have reviewed the comments posted between last night and this morning and found them to contain some valid points. However, since that time, there has been no update. The only individuals with whom I have spoken since the dinner in question are Jan and my younger sister. I would like to clarify a few points that I observed in the comments. First, Jan and I are newly engaged. Our relationship has progressed rapidly, and we have strong feelings for each other. We were both aware that we were committed to the relationship for the long term. Given the circumstances, it is likely that she already had some inkling about our relationship. When we first met, I was the one who initiated contact, not the other way around. I am uncertain about her knowledge of our familial relationship. I inquired after learning that they had dated, and she stated that she was unaware. I did not have a reason to doubt her, but I concede that Mark's apparent overreaction does raise concerns. Thirdly, I was unaware of the relationship between her and Mark. The relationship between Mark and I has been characterized by a lack of proximity and communication. While we were once close during our formative years, our proximity and communication diminished as we grew older. Prior to my relocation, we did not engage in frequent discourse, except on special occasions such as birthdays. Jen was aware of my family, but her familiarity with them was not extensive until I chose to introduce her to Mark. When they met again, I did not perceive any residual sentiments from either party. Jen did not interact with Mark in a manner suggestive of indifference, yet furthermore, she did not display any overt displays of affection towards him. I was informed that this relationship had only lasted a month. I did not believe that I needed to seek Mark's permission to propose marriage, although I recognized that this may have been an erroneous assumption. Nevertheless, I intend to discuss the matter with Mark this weekend to gain a full understanding of the situation. I accept responsibility for not seeking his perspective on the relationship, which I should have done. I will provide an update when further information becomes available. For the time being, I will limit my comments to those in which the original poster has replied. I would advise against forming an emotional attachment to the idea that he is family. Aside from my mother and a few aunts, I have not shared this information with anyone. They are aware of my relationship with my fiancé and would not be swayed by arguments from those who do not know us. I am confident that my fiancé will not be influenced by these individuals. It is safe to say that she holds him in low regard as well. I would like to begin by thanking everyone for reading my post. I have had a busy weekend and have not had the opportunity to respond to many people, but I have edited in responses to the most common questions I saw in the comments on the original post. I am grateful for your support and feedback, even if it is critical. I called Mark and asked him to meet with me at my place to talk. I informed him that I would prefer Jen was also present for the discussion, but I was amenable to her absence should Mark have preferred it that way. He agreed to converse with both of us and arrived at my residence at approximately noon today. The initial minutes of the meeting were relatively subdued, but I initiated the dialogue by expressing my regret for not informing him of my intention to propose to Jen and for striking him. He stated that he was not offended but appreciated my apology. I then proceeded to inform him of Jen's perspective on the relationship. I inquired about the nature of the relationship and requested that he confirm the veracity of the information I had received. I indicated that his response throughout the ordeal had been markedly intense and expressed a desire to ensure that I had not misinterpreted the nature of their relationship or undervalued its seriousness. He corroborated that the duration of their courtship had been limited to a few weeks and that he had terminated the relationship due to a loss of interest. Jen inquired as to whether his behavior was a manifestation of residual feelings or a remnant of regrets. He stated that he could acknowledge that she was more attractive than when he last saw her, but that there were no accompanying feelings or regrets. He asserted that he simply did not like seeing a girl he dated, even if it was of a short duration. As a man, he believed that he had violated his ex-partner by pursuing a relationship with her. I reminded him that I was unaware of their relationship, and therefore could not have acted with any conscious knowledge of their history together. He dismissed my concerns and asserted that it was irrelevant. He maintained that, were the circumstances reversed, he would have acted similarly. I inquired why he had proposed to her if he did not possess any residual feelings. In essence, he discussed the matter with a friend who was present during Mark and Jen's relationship. This individual prompted him to consider the possibility that Jen was aware of our familial connection from the outset. Furthermore, he was attempting to exact retribution, particularly given that Jen had become disinterested in him following their separation. His friend encouraged him to test this hypothesis, prompting him to propose marriage and observe her response. Jen inquired about the rationale behind this assumption, and he informed her that he had heard she was inquiring about him following the dissolution of their relationship and still frequenting the locations they had previously frequented together. To go to it was a valid assumption for her to pop up randomly with his brother, which affirmed his suspicions. Jen informed him that she had only asked about him once following the dissolution of their relationship and that she had been socializing at those locations with friends before the relationship ended. She also stated that she would not avoid those locations because of the dissolution of their relationship. Furthermore, she expressed her displeasure at the notion that she would resort to pursuing him just to get back at him. He exhibited a lack of concern and gave her a half-hearted apology. She offered an apology but stated that she needed to understand his perspective. He inquired whether she was truly unaware of the similarities between us. She replied that she did not perceive any resemblance between us until we were in the same room. She noted that we behaved in markedly different ways, which made the similarity seem unlikely to her. He indicated that this conversation was effectively over. Before leaving, he informed me that I could retract his invitation to the wedding because he was unable to support our relationship. I informed him that he was under no obligation to concern himself with the fact that he had previously dated her, as it was highly probable that he would be uninvited anyway. Several hours have elapsed since our conversation, and I am now in a more favorable emotional state. My parents are not entirely satisfied with the decision to uninvite him, but they recognize that it was a mutual one and that it may prove to be the best course of action. My sisters have informed me that they were aware that he had not provided a satisfactory rationale for his behavior and that they do not blame me for my reluctance to accept his presence at the wedding. At the wedding, I intend to limit my contact with Mark. It is unlikely that he will reach out to me in the near future. I would like to thank everyone for reading and commenting. Should any significant developments occur, I will provide an update. In response to the question of why she was unaware of his family, it should be noted that there was minimal discussion of my family at the outset of our relationship. I had left home to distance myself from my parents, specifically. I initiated the process of reconciliation at the request of my sister. When I relocated to my family home, I was transparent about my lack of proximity to them. Jen was understanding of this situation and was comfortable with remaining uninformed, given the circumstances. Editor's note: Updates 1 and 2 were published together, but for clarity, Update 3 would have been posted separately. Approximately 2 weeks after the publication of Update 2, the author combined both updates into a single post. It is probable that this was done because one of the updates was removed or became stuck in limbo on a subreddit. The author was unable to post this to the same forum, so it has been posted directly to the author's profile. This is for the benefit of any interested parties. I have an update to provide. It has been a considerable period of time since I have posted, but a number of developments have occurred since my last conversation with Mark. Consequently, I have been in low contact with Mark since our last discussion. Neither of us has made any telephone calls, and our only interactions have been in family settings. Currently, my mother is upset with Mark. My sister Sophie, aged 22, was recently engaged. The proposal occurred during her birthday celebrations, which were attended by her partner, whom I believe to have been in a relationship with her for approximately 4 years. Following the proposal, we engaged in discussion regarding her aspirations for her wedding day. She did, however, express a desire for a destination wedding. She then proceeded to express her ideas regarding the cake and dress. She made a remark that was along the lines of, "Teddy, I am aware of Mark's prohibition from attending your wedding, but you will not be concerned if he is present at mine." I responded by stating that I was not upset about her guest list, even if I had the desire to be. My mother then gave me a peculiar look and inquired if Mark was still. I informed her that he was not invited to the wedding. This prompted a strong reaction from her, who stated that she had assumed I was joking and that my decision to exclude him from the ceremony was unreasonable. She further accused me of harboring resentment for his presence at the event, suggesting that my actions were motivated by petty spite. I clarified that he and I had reached an understanding regarding his absence from the wedding. I informed her that this was not an appropriate time to discuss my wedding, as the day was about Sophie. If Mark or Sophie wished to discuss my wedding, they could contact me at a later date. Sophie proceeded to express her discontent with my mother's attempts to make her special day about Mark. My mother then dropped the matter. Mark was absent from Sophie's party due to work obligations, and thus unable to attend a few days later. My mother paid me a visit and expressed a desire to discuss my wedding. She inquired as to the rationale behind my adamant stance against Mark's attendance. She also suggested that I address my feelings of insecurity regarding Mark and Jen's previous relationship. I informed her that Mark and I had mutually agreed that he should not be invited to the wedding. I suggested that he could discuss his concerns with me directly if he had an issue with this decision. However, we engaged in a heated discussion, during which she asserted that if I was not going to extend an invitation to Mark, she would also decline to attend the wedding. I informed her that, by ostracizing her son, would be unable to accept her invitation. I further stated that, if she wished to attend, she would have to request an invitation. She then inquired as to whether I would truly be comfortable with her absence. I replied that it would not be the first occasion on which she had missed an event of mine due to Mark's involvement. She asserted that I was highlighting her past mistakes and abruptly departed. I subsequently received communications from her and several family members regarding the incident, indicating that I was in the wrong and urging me to invite Mark to maintain peace. Jen also received messages from my mother has been attempting to persuade her to communicate with me and influence me to reconsider my position, but thus far, there has been no response. The majority of my mother's relatives have expressed solidarity with her and have chosen not to attend the event. In contrast, my father's side of the family, comprising only my aunt and uncle and their 2 children, has aligned with me. I will be attending the wedding, as will my sisters. Jen's family will also be in attendance. I have discussed the situation with Mark and asked him if he had a problem with not having an invitation. He stated that he had uninvited himself and does not understand why there is a fuss, as he still does not intend to attend. He informed me that he wished to be excluded from the dispute, stating that he was not involved and that he would convey the same message to her. As a result, I have resumed minimal communication with my mother, although my relationship with my father remains amicable. I am currently undecided on whether I will extend an invitation to my mother and her family, should they reconsider their position. The likelihood of a boycott is minimal, and I have conveyed this to my father, who has expressed understanding. Jan and I have commenced exploring the possibility of reducing the scale of the venue, given the notable reduction in the guest list. Update 3. My mother has been uninvited from the wedding on an indefinite basis, approximately 2 weeks after she initially decided not to attend. She arrived, paused, and stated her intention to address the situation. We agreed to meet for dinner. Jen prepared a meal for her, and I inquired as to her intentions regarding the wedding. She stated that, while she desires to attend, she is unable to do so due to my failure to extend an invitation to Mark. In light of a seemingly inconsequential misstep, I sought to remind her that his misstep was proposing to my fiancé with me situated a mere 3 feet away. She countered that it was merely a jest. Jen inquired as to why she desired to converse if she remained steadfast in her position regarding Mark's attendance at the wedding. She asserted that her intention was to speak with Jen. She was hoping that Jen would hear her out and persuade me to invite Mark again. She apparently assumed that I was at work and that she would be able to speak with Jen alone. Jen politely informed her that she understood her thought process but that she would not have had that conversation without my presence, given that this is about my brother. My mother made a remark to the effect that Jen was lacking in fortitude and unable to engage in a dialogue without my input, which prompted a vigorous exchange of views between the 3 of us. Jen then requested that my mother leave the premises, whereupon my mother followed her, still vociferating. At this juncture, she was vociferating that Jen was intent on tearing our family apart. As Jen proceeded to unlock the front door, my mother seized her hair and pulled her forcefully to the ground. My mother then struck her and attempted to claw her face. I intervened and physically removed her from her, subsequently escorting her outside. She continued to bang on the door for several minutes. While I ensured Jen's safety before she departed and repeatedly contacted both of us after confirming her well-being, I informed my mother via text message that further communication would be unproductive. I also reached out to my father and sisters to provide an update on the situation. My father expressed surprise and attempted to mediate. My mother offered excuses, stating that she had been experiencing stress regarding the situation for some time. My sisters indicated that they had anticipated that she would eventually become enraged, given her history of erratic behavior. They expressed their intention to ensure Jen's safety. I inquired whether Jen wished to pursue legal action, but she declined, stating that her primary objective was to sever contact with her mother. I informed her that the latter course of action was self-evident, yet advised that she should still contact the police, given that she had been physically assaulted. However, she was reluctant to pursue legal action, fearing that my mother would be arrested. My sisters and Jen's mother subsequently visited her to offer their support. Fortunately, she is currently coping well. My mother has been blocked on all communication channels until Jen indicates otherwise. Jen is reluctant to involve the police because she feels culpable for her mother's arrest. However, my sisters and I are attempting to persuade her to reconsider, and I would at least like to have documentation in case of future incidents. Comments where OP has replied all, it would be advisable to sit down with your mother and accept responsibility for her actions. It is possible that he could do so, but it seems unlikely that he fully comprehends the concept of accountability. It appears that he believes he is not responsible for his mother's actions, and it is uncertain whether any argument would persuade him otherwise. It seems that he attributes her actions to her own selfish motives, and it is unclear whether any evidence would convince him otherwise. On November 12, an individual commented that they should press charges. Jen is still against formal charges, but after discussing the potential consequences with me and reading some of your comments, she agreed to have it documented with the police. This is a precautionary measure in case she wants to talk to my father about the incident. One possible course of action would be to have her resume therapy or some other form of treatment for her erratic behavior. We are also moving forward with the process of going no contact. I will provide some background on my relationship with my parents. Some individuals have inquired about my mother and my decision not to be open with Jen about my relationship with my parents. I believe it would be beneficial to provide some background on why our relationship is currently strained, as some of you have suggested. Mark was my mother's favorite child. She did not hide her preference for him. She did not spend much time with my sisters, and she did not interact with them in the same way that most parents do with their children. My parents had 2 children, but they spent as much time with Mark as possible. They would take him shopping, for example, while they left him with a babysitter. They would also bring him home with them when they went shopping alone. Mark usually received better gifts than the rest of us. For instance, his clothes and toys were often new and expensive, while ours were thrifted. Additionally, new toys were purchased for him that were distinct from the old toys that were shared with the other siblings. If my sisters and I received gifts, they were intended for us to share. However, my mother made it clear that Mark's belongings were solely for him and that we should not interact with them when he misbehaved. I was punished for not serving as a positive role model and demonstrating appropriate behavior. For instance, Mark experienced a period of misbehavior, including the destruction of his toys. I was the one who received the disciplinary action because it was evident that Mark was imitating my actions. Mark was also involved in an incident at school, where he attempted to physically assault another child. As a result, I was placed on a 2-week disciplinary period and instructed to apologize to the victim. Upon reaching the age of 13, I began to advocate for my parents to provide me with an allowance. They agreed, on the condition that I perform various household tasks, including lawn care, trash removal, and leaf raking. The initial amount I received was approximately $25 per week, which I used to start saving. Mark observed that I was receiving monetary compensation and subsequently requested an allowance of his own. Instead of requiring him to perform chores, I allocated $10 of my weekly allowance to him. This was due to our exemplary performance in completing our assigned tasks. When I requested his assistance, he was not expected to perform household tasks, so there was no reason for him to do so. At this time, I began to distance myself from my brother. By the time I entered high school, we only spoke when we needed to request small favors or when we absolutely had to. I began my first job at age 17 because I wanted to purchase a vehicle and earn money that I would not be required to give to Mark. My eldest sister, Maggie, assisted me in opening a bank account and taught me how to budget and save my money. I purchased my first vehicle at age 18. Upon Mark obtaining his driver's license, my parents requested that I allow him to utilize my vehicle for transportation and as a means of gaining additional experience behind the wheel. Initially, I was reluctant to agree to this arrangement. However, for a period of time, it functioned reasonably well. Mark utilized my car when it was not required for his own transportation needs and demonstrated a commendable ability to maintain it. When Mark expressed a desire for my parents to purchase him his own vehicle, my mother approached me and advised me to relinquish my car to him, citing his greater need for it. When I declined, she threatened to evict me from the family residence. This resulted in a heated confrontation that night, ultimately leading to my mother giving Mark my car and removing me from the premises. I transferred ownership of the vehicle to him within the following few days, as I lacked alternative accommodation at the time. I signed the necessary documentation upon graduating from high school. Both of my parents were absent from my graduation ceremony, as Mark did not wish to attend a lengthy event solely for the purpose of witnessing my graduation, and my mother was reluctant to leave him alone overnight. Consequently, I had only the support of my sisters and my aunt and uncle, who had offered to take me out. However, they were ultimately required to return me home at my parents' request, as they had prepared dinner for me. To make amends, my mother prepared a meal that I was unable to consume due to an allergic reaction to shellfish. During my first year after high school, I worked 2 jobs to purchase a vehicle. At the beginning of the new academic year, I relocated for college and terminated all contact with them. My mother initially attempted to communicate via social media and Sophie, but I did not respond. I informed Sophie that she would also be excluded if she persisted when I was unreachable through Sophie. She then tried to contact me through other means. I attempted to communicate with my sister Charlotte and, on several occasions, with Maggie and Mark. However, I was unable to do so effectively, and my efforts were met with resistance. In response, I threatened to file a restraining order for harassment, which, although a bluff, seemed to have the desired effect. My sister ceased communication, and the only messages I received from her were holiday greetings over the years. Around the time I relocated, Charlotte informed me that they had been seeing a family therapist at her request and that my parents wanted to apologize for their actions towards us. Initially, I was reluctant to engage in reconciliation, but I agreed on the condition that they demonstrate sincerity and a willingness to rebuild the relationship. The process commenced when I relocated to my family home. This initial stage of the process did not address the full extent of the difficulties I had experienced. It required significant effort on my part to even begin to rebuild a relationship with my family. When I met Jen, I was uncertain about the direction of my relationship with her and the future of my relationship with my parents. I was reluctant to discuss my family, largely because I was prepared to sever contact if necessary. Jen was understanding of the sensitivity of the topic and did not press me for further information. It is my hope that this account will provide insight into some of the questions that have been raised. In examining the comments that have been posted, it has come to my attention that the original poster, OP, has provided responses to inquiries regarding the lack of reconciliation and the reimbursement for the vehicle. It is evident that the reimbursement for the vehicle was not a significant issue at the time, given that the damage had already occurred. Nevertheless, even now, it is challenging to comprehend the circumstances surrounding this event. He was not particularly exceptional. This is not intended as an insult, he was simply a typical child. My parents did not experience fertility issues, he was not a miraculous occurrence, and he was not a means of resolving marital problems. They did not view him as a financial solution. He was simply born, and they elected to love him more than us. They did not perceive this to be normal, they simply have a proclivity for our parents because they are our parents and believe they possess redeeming qualities. Are you certain you are not adopted? I am biologically related. Unfortunately, they were unable to deny me, even if they desired to do so. I previously made excuses for them, but eventually, I had to acknowledge that they are merely 2 individuals who should never have had children. Update 4, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone. I would like to extend my gratitude to those who have taken the time to provide guidance on my future course of action and for all the kind messages and comments I have received over the past few days/weeks. Jan and I have read the comments together and we are appreciative of all the support. In response to the most common question regarding my decision to reconnect after everything that has transpired, I would like to provide a brief explanation. The underlying motivation for my decision is that I am willing to do anything for my sister. Charlotte expressed a desire for the entire family to be present during the birth of her first child and to provide her with support as she adjusts to this new phase of her life. She did not want to be part of a blended family. Aunts and uncles who would only visit their niece during holidays and birthdays. She was not the type to request much of anything. Childhood. When she asked if I would be willing to try for her, I agreed because it would make her happy. I also believe that part of me hoped that perhaps I have undergone a transformation. I do not regret attempting to reconcile with my parents, although they remain unrepentant. However, I have met the love of my life, so I consider this a positive outcome. Some individuals have inquired about the latest developments. Therefore, I will provide an update. I apologize if this is a confusing or chaotic account. A great deal has transpired. We have filed a report with the police, and we were informed that, despite Jen's lack of desire to pursue legal action, the decision of whether or not to proceed is not ours to make. However, they did assure us that our preference would be taken into account. We provided substantial evidence of the assault, including images of Jen's face and text messages between my mother and father discussing the incident. We were advised to report and record any further incidents with my mother, in case anything else occurs. Given the circumstances, I am skeptical that it will lead to any tangible outcome. Nevertheless, having a record of it is beneficial. I received approximately 100 angry text messages from individuals who have been in contact with Jen, indicating that at least she has been spoken to. In regard to the incident, my mother attempted to persuade me to leave my employment and verbally berated me for attempting to ruin her life. She repeatedly asserted that I was an ungrateful son for attempting to have her arrested for a minor misunderstanding and expressed bewilderment as to what she had done to deserve such punishment. I informed her that if she was not comfortable with the legal ramifications of her actions, she should not have struck Jen. She then demanded that I instruct the police to disregard the report, which I declined. I relayed to her the officer's explicit instructions regarding the matter. She then proceeded to display a strong emotional reaction in the parking lot, striking me several times. I was struck on several occasions, first on the chest and then on the arm, before security personnel intervened and removed her from the premises. I subsequently had to inform my superior of the incident. Fortunately, she was understanding of the circumstances. Upon my return home, I informed Jen of what had transpired. She was visibly upset and requested that we discuss the plan for the future with my family. We engaged in a lengthy discussion, during which we sought and received advice from Reddit users. We ultimately decided to cease all communication with my family, with the exception of my sister. We concluded that maintaining contact with them was causing undue stress for both of us and that their presence in my life was not beneficial. Despite the lack of a formal marital status, she expressed a desire to consider relocating and creating a physical distance between herself and my family. She asserted that she had attempted to refrain from involvement in my familial disputes, citing that it was not her place to do so. However, she was adamant in her refusal to tolerate the behavior of my mother or her enabling of my father's abusive actions. I have divulged too much information in this post, but I concurred with her assessment that they were a greater source of trouble than they were worth. Furthermore, I am no longer willing to tolerate this situation. I also agreed to attend therapy sessions and she is assisting me in locating a suitable therapist. After our discussion, I contacted my father to inform him of my decision to terminate contact. I initiated a period of no contact with my family. Upon initially calling, I left a voicemail requesting a lengthy conversation. When he called back, my father inquired if it was acceptable for my mother to be present during our discussion. I informed him that it was, as she needed to be aware of my perspective as well. The subsequent conversation proceeded as one might have anticipated. I informed them both that I was severing ties with them. My father demanded to know why I would do such a thing after investing significant effort into repairing our relationship. I informed him that the recent developments with Mark had made me realize that nothing could be salvaged. I informed them that the reconciliation between us had not been successful and that their continued favoritism towards Mark had irreparably damaged our relationship. I made it clear that I was no longer willing to invest in a relationship that was clearly failing. I informed them that I had consented to reconcile for Charlotte's benefit, but that I could no longer tolerate the disrespect directed towards me and Jen. I made it clear that I would no longer tolerate such treatment for the sake of our relationship. In particular, I expressed my frustration with my mother's tendency to blame me for her shortcomings. I also informed her that I would never forgive her for her poor parenting and Mark's disrespectful attitude. Furthermore, I stated that I would never forgive her for her actions towards Jen and me and my sisters during our upbringing. She attempted to suggest that I should move on like my sister has, but I immediately interrupted her and told her that she should take their forgiveness, and she demanded that I move on because she would never receive such a gesture from me, particularly in light of her recent actions. She began to sob and inquire as to how I could treat her in such a manner. I informed her that her distress was unwarranted, as I had done nothing wrong. She became increasingly emotional and asserted that I had only sought to damage her life. This led to a heated exchange between her and Jen, during which Jen expressed her displeasure with her in more colorful terms. She proceeded to launch a series of disparaging remarks, including epithets that were both colorful and unpleasant. It is unclear whether she departed the room or simply ceased speaking, but her mother ceased communication when Jen had finished speaking. My father expressed his discontent with being excluded from my life and requested that I consider my mother's perspective. He noted that she was also grappling with the challenges of parenting and caring for her children, and that I was being unfair in my response to her struggles. He asserted that we were a family and that we should not allow past mistakes to impede our collective progress. I informed him that the only person she ever cared for was Mark and herself, and that nothing he could say or do would persuade me to change my mind. I stated that it was his decision whether or not to retain my number, but that I would block him from accessing my mother and that I would not be contacting him again. I then terminated the call. I subsequently sent a comprehensive email, which included a link to my online posts, to all relevant parties. In extending invitations to the wedding, I excluded my aunt and uncle and my sisters. I had not shed tears for a considerable period, but Jen held me while I wept after composing the email. She reassured me that we would be fine. My sisters also contacted me after reading the email. I apologized to Charlotte for being unable to reconcile with her as she had requested, but she told me it was fine and that I was not at fault. I had to sever contact with them once more. The response from my family has been somewhat mixed. Some are angry. I discussed the intricacies of my familial situation on an online forum with a broad readership. Some individuals expressed displeasure at my parents, indicating that they were unaware of the gravity of the situation. The last person I consulted about these developments was Mark. He inquired as to whether I was severing ties with him as well. I informed him that I was not, but that I would not be making a conscious effort to maintain communication with him either. He did not contest this, but instead wished me well regarding the upcoming nuptials. We have not spoken since. Jen and I are currently seeking alternative accommodations. Our plan is to relocate to a more convenient location in proximity to Jen's brother lives approximately 3 hours from our current location. I am interested in the city where he resides. I discussed the possibility of transferring with my supervisor. Jen is exploring the option of working remotely or seeking new employment. Our venue has been changed due to a reduction in the guest list. My full-time supervisor is considering allowing us to use his lake house for the wedding. I do not intend to provide further updates on this matter, at least until the wedding, as I am focused on relocating. I will continue with my life, but I will endeavor to respond to any inquiries that may arise. I extend my gratitude and best wishes for the holiday season. I have taken the liberty of editing this post, as it initially contained details that were not suitable for public viewing. Should any information be unclear, I will gladly answer any questions in the comments section. I am already anticipating the challenges that may arise from our relocation. My mother may also accompany us, given her penchant for following us wherever we go. She does not acquiesce to her desires, rather, she becomes obsessive until she is compelled to cease her behavior. I consulted with a legal professional to explore the possibility of obtaining a restraining order to prevent her from initiating further conflict. I am grateful for the expressions of support. I wish you all a happy holiday season. My mother has perused the comments, according to my daughter. She believes that individuals on Reddit, with whom she is not personally acquainted, have no authority to condemn her as a flawed individual. I do not believe that I can alter my perspective on this matter. I extend my best wishes to them, and I maintain a distance from my family and my own personal relationships.